Hi everyone, this is Dr. Rebecca Kason, and today I'm here to answer one of our most frequently asked questions: what actually is dialectical thinking? So I chose this topic for today because I think it's both important in understanding the basics of DBT and dialectical behavior therapy, and at the same time it's particularly important given what's going on in the world today. A lot of us are being challenged interpersonally, and dialectical thinking is both helpful at improving our relationships with ourselves and with others. So the basic idea of dialectical thinking is that there could be two seemingly opposite ideas or point of views. They seem like completely black and white, and actually they could both be true and coexist at the same time, right? So you can think that it's really important to get 8 hours of sleep at night, and that should be a rule that's never broken. And then your child can think that that's a terrible rule and it doesn't even make sense, and they don't need to follow it, right? So those seem to be opposite ideas, opposite concepts, and at the same time, they both can be true and coexist at the same time. So as I go through this video, you'll get a better understanding of what I mean with that. So the second point of what a dialect actually is that everything and every person is connected in some way. So paying attention to those connections and similarities between people can be really important at improving relationships, rather than focusing on differences, right? The third point is that accepting the idea that change is always constant. Each moment is new, and reality itself changes with every new moment. And accepting that will help you better accept the changes that are going on in today's environment, right? And the last is that change is also transactional, right? So the actions I take, or maybe even the mood I'm in, will impact those that are around me, right? And we might not always notice those transactions, but paying attention to those transactions can be really helpful at improving our relationships and our own well-being as well. So how to think and act dialectically. Now I'm going to move a little bit more deeper into these four concepts so you can get a better understanding of them. So the first concept, just as a review, is that there's always more than one side to anything that exists. Let's look at both sides to get a better understanding. So how do you do that? One way to do that is to ask your wise mind, what am I missing? What's the kernel of truth in the other side? So in my prior example about believing in 8 hours of sleep for your child, what's the kernel of truth on the other side? Well, maybe your child needs 7 hours of sleep, or maybe your child is having difficulty falling asleep at night because of anxiety about what's going on. Or maybe your child understands that concept and at the same time they're prioritizing their social life right now because that's what's keeping them going. So what is the kernel of truth on the other side? And trying to understand that, even if the person's not even able to verbalize that to you, will be so helpful. The next is letting go of extremes, letting go of the either or the both and, or the always never thinking, right? So it's not either you're following the rules or you're not. Maybe one night your child has an easier time doing that, and then the next night they don't. That doesn't mean that they don't follow the rules, period. It very much so is somewhere, the truth is somewhere in between, and paying attention to that middle path and what's in between is a lot more helpful than focusing on the black and whites of the situation. Balancing opposites, so validate both sides when you disagree, accept reality, and work on change. So this can be the idea of looking at not just your own side, but the other point of view. Making lemonade out of lemons. So in the example I've been giving you, how amazing is it that your child is staying socially connected during this time? It can be so difficult to do so, and they're finding a way to do so even if it is impacting their sleep, right? So finding that lemonade out of lemons will reduce your emotional reactivity, put you in a better mind spot to then deal with the problem at hand and work things through. Embrace confusion. So this is the idea of letting go of the extremes means, and thinking dialectically and thinking in that middle path point of view, it means that you're probably going to be confused, because if you're not saying that either you're following the rules or you're not, or if you're not saying that either I'm right or you're wrong, that means that you're taking the time to really understand the gray area, and that's confusing. So embracing that confusing, accepting that as part of the process will be helpful. play devil's advocate. So argue each side of your position with equal passion. So imagine if you take all the passion you've used to describe your point of view to the other person in this situation, and then you took that same amount of passion and challenged it towards their point of view. It might feel silly, it might feel untrue to you if you practice this as an exercise, but it will very much so help you understand the other point of view, and then therefore reach an agreement with that person further on. You might want to use metaphors and storytelling to help unstick and free your mind. So maybe think of this as, imagine if your friend called to tell you that this is going on for them, or imagine that, someone you're mentoring, let's say you're mentoring a child, somebody else's child called you to tell you this is what's going on. How might you think of things in a different way? Because it's not related to you, right? It's not personal. So it might help you free your mind and think of things more dialectically. So the second idea that I discussed in dialectical thinking is that everything and every person is connected in some way. So being aware that you're connected, treating others as how you want them to treat you, looking for similarities among people rather than differences, and noticing the physical connections among things will just help you be aware of those connections, right? Especially right now, we're all sharing a space. Might be a small space, might be a large space, depending on where you're sheltered in place, but there are connections between what's going on in that household, and you're all contributing in some way, even if it doesn't feel that way. So pay attention to those connections. Next, embrace change. So there's so much change going on, probably both within your household and within the world surrounding you. Throwing yourself into that change, allowing it, embracing it, and practicing radical acceptance when all these things are changing around you will help you so much, and will be really helpful for your family, as well as they see the acceptance that you've practiced, and they might model after that. So one way to do that is to practice just getting used to change. So maybe you want to, instead of taking a walk the same way that you've been doing for the past few minutes, take it the other way. Maybe at the dinner table, everybody takes a turn sitting in a different seat this time. Practicing getting used to change and practicing radical acceptance will help you radically accept the bigger things as they are coming, right? And there is more things to accept and change as life goes on, because change is the only constant. And lastly, change is transactional. Remember that you affect your environment and your environment affects you. Pay attention to your effect on others and how they affect you. There are some minute things that are going on interpersonally in your home that you might not even be aware of. You know, maybe your child is having a hard time right now and is grumpy most of the day, and you give them a small compliment and their mood slightly changes. Now, if you weren't paying attention to the transactional change between that interaction, you might not even notice that small change. They're still grumpy, right? So it didn't work, I guess. But if they went from a grumpiness of a 10 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10, that's an improvement. And paying attention to that change will allow you to continue improving things and breaking out of those interactional patterns that many of us are stuck in. So remind yourself that everything has a cause, which means everything can have a solution, and use that to empower you and focus on your interactions with others instead of who's to blame.